The only way for us to have an appreciation for the difficult situation that Yahowah finds himself in at this moment in time, relative to his desire to reconcile his fractured relationship with his people, Yisrael, is to go back in time 3,450 years to when the relationship fractured beyond repair. Israel, while claiming to have a preferred relationship with Yahowah, has actually destroyed that relationship. God's people are not his people. Yahowah chose them, but they have not chosen him. Now, that does not mean that Yahowah has forgotten his promises that he made to Abraham regarding the children of the covenant, or to Yishak, or to Jacob, or of course to Daud. Yahowah still loves Yisrael, still loves Yehudim. It's just that they don't love him in return. And for us to have an appreciation for how long this has transpired in this terrible way, and how deep the fracture is, we need to go all the way back to the Exodus when it was fractured. And so for you to garner a better appreciation for the mission of the Chakmah Choter, which is the name of this ongoing series, for you to have an appreciation for the very difficult situation that he is in, and the difficulty, the challenge of the mission that is before him. We need to know how bad the estrangement was and remains between God and his people. And so we're going to go back in time, because the Chakmah Choter, his responsibility is to mend this rift. It is the only reason that he, unlike anyone who has gone before him or will be after him, has been given the 7 spirits of Yahowah. It is the only reason that he is the most talked about individual in prophecy at this time. It is the reason that the YAHOWAH.com website exists with the 35 books, all available to you for free. It is why we're doing the Yahowah blog. But again, for you to have an appreciation for how difficult this challenge is, and how few Yehudim and Israelites and even Goyim will shirk the religions that confuse and bind them, and let go of the politics that have ensnared them, and embrace the truth. They will be few, because the obstacles set in the way are many. It got so bad that Moshe, who is the most attributed man in all of human history to Yisrael, well, it should be Daud, because he is the very essence of Israel, as my beloved wife would say on regular occasions, that Daud simply is Israel. He represents the good and the bad of Israel. He is the living embodiment of Israel. Moshe is the person most noted to have represented Yisrael, because he led the children of Yisrael out of slavery and the crucibles of religious and political oppression of Mitzrayim, known today as Egypt. But what is not known is what the Torah actually says about their journey from slavery to the promised land. It was not pleasant. Jews were not kind. They were arrogant. They were embittered. They were obnoxious.
Still are.
And for the most part, even though I will tell you that no one loves Israel more than I do, no one is more devoted to Yehudim. Nonetheless, love requires telling the truth. And today, the Jews are their own worst enemy. They've erased Yahowah's name. They won't say it even when they're shamed into it. They're obnoxious about their Talmud and their rabbis. They pretend to be Torah observant when they wouldn't know the Torah if it hit them between the eyes. Oh,
True.
can't hit them between the eyes because they're wearing that stupid box up there between their eyes. They're dressed in religious attire, even though God hates religion. It's a tough audience. And it's been a tough audience for a very long time. It's so tough that both Moshe and God himself gave up on you. He didn't give up on you because you were so pleasant and they were just having a wonderful time. They gave up on you because you're obnoxious. They didn't give up on you because of their ineptitude, but because of yours. This is what the Torah reads, and this is in Bamidbar, means in the wilderness. It's been changed to the stupid title, Numbers 11. Moshe is speaking to Yahowah. He says, I'm simply to succeed. I can't overcome this. I don't even comprehend it. I am incapable of prevailing. And now I'm in a position where my confidence is shattered. It was written in the call imperfect, which means the condition was ongoing. There was no end in sight. Into the call stem, which says this should be interpreted literally, not figuratively. I'm not able to succeed. I cannot understand this. I can't overcome the situation. By myself, all alone, just me. To carry and bear, to lift up or tolerate all of these people. It's obvious that it's just too great a burden for me. Flatline. He gave up.
He had a meltdown.
He did. He had a meltdown. He just, and while that's true, that Moshe is a great man, a tremendous character. There are so many examples of Moshe being the right man at the right time, doing the right thing. I have enormous respect for Moshe. This, of course, was not his proudest moment. But are we to blame Moshe for being human? Or do we blame the children of Israel for being inhuman?
I'm going to venture to guess that Moshe would have preferred to have dealt with the Egyptians.
No, he walked away from the Egyptians. He despised them. But
yes, I know.
The answer to the question is that it wasn't a question of Moshe's humanity.
Mm-mm.
It was a question of the children of Israel's inhumanity. You turned on God. You didn't just reject him. You abused him. You spit in his face. You were literally obnoxious to the very God who saved you. And that is why you've gone through so much hell over the ensuing 3,000 years. It is why you're being bludgeoned by Islamic missiles today. It is why you were bludgeoned by the flood of Al-Aqsa Muslims less than 2 years ago. It is why you're about to enter the time of Israel's troubles, where it's going to get worse than it has ever been before. All of your problems can be laid to a single attitude: your negative, condescending attitude towards God. Moshe said, I can't do this. I cannot overcome it. I don't even understand it. No one can prevail by themselves alone to carry or bear all of these people.
No, when you call your God Hashem, the name, yeah, where do you go from there? It's not a really good starting point.
Yes, when you've erased God's name from his own testimony.
Yeah.
I mean, here Moshe had a private conversation with Yahweh that he's made public, and he was very clear. Yahweh was to him, my one and only name is Yahweh. And you replace Yahweh's name with G-D and Hashem and the Lord.
Adonai.
Are you out of your mind? Seriously. What gives you the right to erase the name of the creator of the universe, the very God who saved you? Have you ever read what Yahweh etched in stone? How does it begin? I am Yahweh, your God. What does the second statement say? Don't be religious. What does the third statement say? Anyone who negates the importance and value of Yahweh's name shall never be forgiven. That's just on the first of the two tablets. What part of that message didn't you get, Israel? Are you really now to acknowledge, because it's in black and white, that Moshe himself gave up on you? The man you call the great liberator, the greatest of the prophets, goddamn rabbis even want to call him a rabbi.
Oh, you're so insufferable.
And yet he said, you're impossible. No one can bear under this load. Now, you want to know why I was given the 7 spirits of Yahweh? Because no one can do it alone. Moshe was right. It can't be done alone. You're too difficult. You're too stubborn. You're too full of yourselves. You know, I spent this morning on X, and man, it's to the extent that you can read an Israeli post, it is, boy, we're really taking it to the Iranians, man. We have total air superiority. We're bombing those Iranians. Yeah, you bombed a news agency. You're out of your ever-loving mind. I mean, I thought it was hilarious in the sense that the Islamic woman there wearing her full black hijab was pointing her mean little finger. And he says that because Allah will never allow their bombs to hit us. And kaboom. I mean, she barely finished the sentence and kaboom. And I realized it was a propaganda arm. But it's a war crime, Israel. You can't do that kind of stuff. You bombed a university yesterday. You just can't do that kind of stuff, Israel.
However, secretly inside, everyone in the Middle East
cheered. I understand that so many people cheered when she said, Allah will protect us from the bombs, and then kaboom. I understand, but Israel, you just can't do that.
It's almost as good as the beeper bombs.
And Israel, this is the second war that you've engaged in under circumstances that are unwinnable. Netanyahu's war goals of eliminating Hamas were impossible. They remain impossible. You can't fight a war when your goals are impossible. There is no winning a war when the goals are impossible. And all you did by re-upping and going back into Gaza To destroy even more what you've already destroyed is make a bad situation worse. Yeah, I get it. The Gazans are all Muslims. It was Muslims from Gaza that perpetrated 10/7. It was obnoxious what they did. It was savage what they did. And yes, it's appropriate to hold them accountable for what they have done. But there's a bigger issue here. And the bigger issue is Israel's survival. And by going in and bombing Gaza to smithereens, you've turned the world against you. It was already leaning that way. And you've cemented worldwide opinion against Israel, which is going to lead invariably and soon, imminently, to the creation of a Fakistinian state. And when it is imposed, the terror is inside, and Israel becomes indefensible. But you brought that on yourselves because you prosecuted the war incorrectly against a symptom and not against the disease and the plague itself, which is Islam. And now you've gone into Iran. I get it. Iran was building a nuclear bomb. That is the only intelligent assessment that can be made for a nation that is willing to risk everything, its economy, its status in the world, to enrich uranium when it floats on a sea of oil and gas. I mean, does anybody ever bother to think, what do atoms do in a nuclear reactor? They boil water. What does gas do? What does oil do? It boils water. You're floating on a sea of it that costs less than a quarter to extract, to boil water, and you want to say they're going to cast it all aside, their standing in the world, their economic future, all of it, for an atomic program to boil water? Are you out of your ever-loving mind? And then on top of that, if you're going to boil water, the fissile purity of uranium-235 is 3.5%. No one enriches massive amounts of uranium past 3.5% for any purpose other than a nuclear bomb. And Iran's enrichment went to 20 and then to 60, and in many cases now is past 90. So all of these nincompoops out there that saying, oh, they never had any intent to make a bomb, it was for civilian use.
Bullshit.
You have to be absolutely ignorant and irrational to make that claim. But the very fact that Iran was on the cusp of completing all of the elements necessary for their bomb, and that they were screaming daily, death to Israel, so that their intent for that bomb was to destroy Israel, and they announced it publicly. So therefore, Israel's justification, even though Netanyahu did a lousy job of making it, to destroy, to bury the Iranian nuclear project was justified. It's another war goal that Israel can't obtain. Israel doesn't have the wherewithal to bomb that deep under the earth, which is where Fordo in particular is, and even Nance is 8-10 stories underground, under layer and layer of concrete. You can take out the surface, you can go down 30 feet, and maybe even with 50 jets dropping 50 of the lightweight concrete bunker busters that the F-15s and F-35s can carry, successives like a chisel. The first one takes off a smidgen, and the second one takes off a little more, and the next one takes off a little more. It's like the 40 that were dropped on Nasrallah. Each successively went down a little deeper, and you got him. But you're not talking about a bunker with one man in it. This is a bunker that is enormous and has thousands of centrifuges in it. And your ability to puncture that with your technology and your means of conveyance and your bombs is just not there. And Fordo, in fact, you haven't even attempted Fordo because you can't even come close. It isn't even known whether America's Moab 30,000-pound bunker buster carried in a B-2 can take it out. Therefore, Israel, your war goals were not obtainable. And you can't defeat an enemy that is 100 times your size, 20 times more populous, infinitely richer in natural resources. If it's a prolonged war, you lose. And you're so small, Israel, that even if you take out most of the missiles, the ones that still strike you do too much damage. You know, you couldn't defeat Hamas in little old Gaza. And all they had left was some bottle rockets and some handguns and some RPGs. You couldn't defeat them. What gives you the thought that you can defeat the Iranians? And take out their nuclear program when it's buried under mountains and you know it. Yeah, you're celebrating. Okay, we have total control of the skies. Well, obviously, the Iranian missiles are avoiding the interceptors because you have a total blackout on news out of Israel now. Obviously, you're begging the United States to engage, to do what you couldn't do. Because you're in a position where there was only one way to win. I hope the hell you prevail. As the foremost expert on the planet today on the curse of Islam, I hope you prevail. But the only way you can prevail is for the majority of Iranians to forsake Islam and to form a secular government. Because if that does not occur, you can't win. You cannot bomb a country into submission. It's never been done. It won't be done. And you can't send in the troops. You don't have enough. Not for a country the size of Iran. So you didn't think it through in either case. You bit off more than you could chew. You established goals that were not achievable. And guess what? All the while, is there a single Israeli that is saying, we are now relying on Yahowah? We know that Dod is our Messiah and King. He is our Savior. Because if you had, you wouldn't need a jet. You wouldn't need a bomb. You wouldn't even need an IDF. You would not need the Iron Dome, David Sling, the THAAD missile system.
Or to turn your sons into killers.
You wouldn't even have to rely on the most unreliable man who's probably ever led a significant nation, Donald Trump. But you haven't progressed very far from this condition in the desert. Just a matter of days away from Choreb. Just days away from Choreb, and Moshe is saying, I can't do this job. It's impossible. I don't even understand these people. This is way too great a burden for me. Look it up. Bamidbar in the wilderness, Numbers 11:14. Now, if you think, oh, maybe he's just, having a little chit chat with God over these issues, and it was just, an incident. They got over it, and I'm making too big a deal out of it now. Let me tell you what comes next. Fasten your seatbelt, Israel. Moshe continued, if it is to be like this, that you intend to work with me and act toward me in this way, you should want to kill me. Mm-hmm. You should want to kill me. You think he was just having a little temporary issue? If it is to be like this, if you intend to work with me in this way, you should want to kill me. If I find some favor in your sight, I beg you to put me to death so that I do not witness my disastrous shepherding. Kill me because I can't do this. I don't want to have to endure this any longer. I can't succeed. Just put me out of my misery now.
Did you hear that, Israel? Yahweh said, speak to the children of Israel. And Moshe said, yeah, kill me now. That is how impossible we remain until this day.
The only difference, Israel,
Sad.
between Moshe and myself as it pertains to the impossibility of the challenge is that Moshe was surrounded by 600,000 of you, all but a couple of you obnoxious. Even his own brother and sister,
the worst,
were the worst of the obnoxious. And so Moshe had a man that was silent at this point, Caleb, and as we're going to see, one who just didn't get it. And at this point, Yeshua ben Nun. But other than that, he was completely alone. And he was surrounded by 600,000 belligerents. And the belligerents, his enemy, where's his own people? And he says, God, it's impossible. I can't do this. Just kill me because I don't want to endure this failure. It's a disaster in the making. So if I have earned any favor in your sight, put me to death now. Take me out of my misery. This is Moshe speaking to the children of, or speaking to Yahweh about the children of Israel. Are you aware of this? Have any rabbi ever told you this? I was going to say, there's one difference now. And that is that,
you don't.
well, I'm exposed to 20 times that number of Israelites. And many of them are even more belligerent, particularly on the two extremes. The Haredim, ultra-Orthodox Jews, are just revoltingly obnoxious, even worse than what Moshe encountered during the Exodus. And then you have the Marxist, progressive, dim-witted, foul-mouthed Israelis who would easily would sell out Israel to Muslims. Give Israel to the Muslims.
Yeah, they're amoral morons.
So I have 20 times the number of belligerents, and they are more extreme on both sides. And they have access to far greater platforms of communication than I do. They have a far larger audience. So in that degree, I'm in a worse position than he was in. But I have the single difference here is that not only do I know how the story ends, not only do I know what's going to happen between now and when it does finally come to a close, and therefore the benefit of all of the prophets, which Moshe was just the first of them, but I also have the 7 spirits of Yahweh. Moshe, we weren't told when Moshe was given the Ruach of Yahweh. We're only told that the Ruach of Yahweh, because of this moment, was diminished within him and shared with 70 others, and the 70 others provided no value whatsoever. And we are told that there were times from this point on that the Spirit of Yahweh was placed upon individuals, none more notably, more fully, more powerfully than David. But it would not be until the last days when Yahweh would do something entirely different and place the 7 spirits of Yahweh on a single individual, his Choter. to restore this fallen stump that is Israel, to give life to the roots that long ago stopped bearing fruit. And so that is what I have that he did not have so long ago. And that is the reason why we will succeed, not with most of you, but with the best of you. I am not going to ask Yahweh to kill me. I am not going to tell Yahweh that I cannot bear this because I'm not alone. And I will not say that I do not understand because I do. And because I know I have obtained favor in Yahweh's sight. And I know that my shepherding is productive. I know that I will continue to live, and that those who listen to me and do as I am encouraging you will live too. In his case, that was Numbers 11:15. Moshe hadn't yet even settled into the job. Truth be known, he didn't want this job. And he was literally talked into it by Yahweh.
Yeah.
And now all of his worst fears had materialized. The reason Moshe didn't want this job, the reason that he used every excuse in the book, including, I stutter, they don't think back clearly.
He didn't want the job.
What a lousy excuse that one was. I mean, he listened to him and embody him. He's brilliant. He's articulate. It was just a lousy excuse. The reason that Moshe didn't want this job is he had been in Mitzrayim, in Egypt. He had been in Pharaoh's household. He knew and was disgusted by the religiosity of the place and of the politics of Israel and the militarism of Israel, and particularly that caste economic system that is pervasive amongst all civilizations until the American experience and experiment. That he knew all of that and he despised it. He didn't want to go back to that. He ran away from it. He didn't run away, he left it. And in the process, he actually stood up against it. And on behalf of these very Israelites that were antagonizing him now, and he risked his life to defend them. And their way of thanking him was to say, we didn't ask for your help. Why don't you just go away before the Egyptians find out that you're the one that did it? We tell them that you're the one that did it. They were obnoxious to their Savior then, and he knew it. And he knew they would be obnoxious to their Savior now. And they were. That's why he didn't want the job. You proved him right. The children of Israel were every bit as belligerent and antagonistic as he had remembered the last time he had tried to help them. The sojourn from religious subjugation to covenant emancipation was progressing poorly. And even though the revelation of Bereshith had gone beautifully and Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim had gone according to plan, every other aspect of their relationship was off kilter. They would need a reboot, and yet it would not occur. Israel would not shub, change, and return to God until there was no other option but Yahweh alone. And in terms of a massive change, that is still in our future, not in your past. Now, if you'll note, Yahweh did not lecture Moshe. God did not even mention his meltdown. Instead, he felt empathy for his shepherd, recognizing what he was up against. Jews have become difficult. They have some wonderful qualities, but listening and cooperating with God are just not among them.
Listening, not one of them.
Now, there really is no way, no reason, I should say, for God to reveal this story about a man that he cared deeply about, the man that he respected more than any other man on the planet, Moshe. This is really an embarrassing experience for Moshe. And it's embarrassing for God's people, whom he also loves. So when we realize just how embarrassing this was for Moshe and how embarrassing it is for the children of Israel, we have to wonder, why would God tell us this story? Why are we purview to the meltdown at this point of Moshe, a person who conveyed the Torah to us, that introduced us to Yahweh's name? Why let us see this utter and complete failure? Why expose us to the derangement of the children of Israel? Why? Because clearly, over the last 3,500 years, there's not a single Jew who has benefited from this story. Not a single one has taken this story to heart and said, it must be us. Our God rejected us. Our liberator, Moshe, the Torah giver, rejected us. It must be us. It's still us. Maybe we need to take this to heart and deal with it. Not a single Jew, not in 3,450 years has done this.
I can vouch for that. Like, no Passover Seder I've ever been to talked about Moshe wanting to
None.
be dead. No.
It has been completely passed over.
Yep.
So why tell the story? I get right back to it. Why tell this story? Moshe is embarrassed by this story. The children of Israel are degraded by this story. It leaves them vulnerable to being attacked by their adversary, none of which, by the way, have bothered to understand the story either. I mean, Christianity, Paul could have used this to validate his point of replacement theology, of why Jews had to be forsaken so that the promises could be given to Gentiles. He absolutely could have used this and twisted it for that purpose, but he didn't. And the rabbis skip right over it, so they've learned nothing from it. So it gets back to the question, what's the purpose?
So that you know.
The answer is because the Choter must succeed. That's the purpose. And it's important for the Choter to know what he's up against. It's important for the Choter to be able to be intelligent enough to apply this story to Israel today and say, you need to get over yourself. You're still this way. And your IDF is not going to resolve this for you. Your politicians are not going to resolve this for you. Your rabbis are making this worse for you. This was written for a singular purpose, and you're witnessing that purpose fulfilled in this presentation. And it's not the only one like it. The next chapter of Numbers 12 is exactly the same, as was the presentation of the adulterous woman in Numbers 5, as was the presentation of the red heifer in Numbers 19. It is all for you to understand now and to be explained to you by Yahweh's Choter. And his ability to do it is because Yahweh has made him Chakmah. That's why we're here. And it is the only rational answer to the question I just asked. Why did Yahweh allow the man that he respected more than any other human at the time to embarrass himself and for us to know about his embarrassment? And why did he allow his people, the children of Israel, to degrade themselves to this point? He didn't allow them to degrade themselves, but for us to know that they degraded themselves to this point. To be told this way, since no one has capitalized upon it up to this point. And now you're hearing it explained to you for the first time. It is because this chapter of Numbers, like Numbers 5, like Numbers 12, like Numbers 19, and even Numbers 20, was written for me to share with you today in this way. You need to know how serious your problem is, Israel. Yehudim, if you're going to change. You need to acknowledge that you have this problem. And maybe that's the biggest challenge of all, is getting you to acknowledge that you have the problem. And that's what this story does. It says your problem with God is so egregious that Moshe himself gave up. And if you remember the preamble to this story, God was so disgusted by you that he burnt everything around the camp. It's just his anger was so inflamed that everything around the encampment went up in smoke and flames. So I'm going to give you a little insight, my perspective on things. Many of you know that I'm an airline captain, ATP, airline transport captain. I am a yacht captain. I know how to handle very fast and very large moving vehicles. I've studied it. And that study, and then the execution of that, the experience of it, has put me in a very different situation than most people. So I know that, like a good captain or pilot, we have always rehearsed our response so that we are prepared for every contingency. Everything that could happen in a yacht, large boat. I owned an 82-foot yacht. The forces, power of something of that size, if you do not know what you're doing, will take out an entire marina. It will take lives, destroy limbs. And when you're dealing with airplanes that fly at 30,000 feet and at 400, 500 miles an hour, things happen very, very quickly. And in a three-dimensional realm, you can make a mistake, but you'd better identify your mistake in a real hurry and have a plan to resolve it. You better be way ahead of that airplane. In most cases, I'm 30 minutes ahead of the airplane and I'm 15 minutes ahead of the boat. And you have to be. And you have to have already practiced every possible contingency, everything that can go wrong. So it's wise in situations like Moshe found himself to put ourselves into these narratives and consider what we might have done differently, so that when we're confronted with a difficult situation like this, we're prepared to handle it. And so in my case, I would have pushed the grumblers aside. I would have known that they were coming, and I would have known how I'm going to respond, and I would have pushed them aside. I would have found a prominent rock as a crag myself upon which to stand, and I would have told the whole lot of them to shut up and remove their heads from their posteriors. My wife is chuckling. She knows exactly. That's exactly what I would have done.
Get your head out of your tuchus.
Yes. If there were still those among them who wanted to go back to Mitzrayim, I'd point the way. Mm-hmm. Go. And for those wanting to go to the promised land, I'd remind them that it's only available to those who respect the one who is offering it to them, Yahweh. I'd be uncompromising, resolute. Don't take it out on the microphone, though, Craig.
I think if that approach were used with the children of Israel coming out of Egypt, very few of them would have come out. Look what we had come out of Babylon, just a few. Yes. That weren't the numbers that went in, obviously.
No, I'm intolerant.
Oh, yes.
And Yahowah's intolerant.
And
We'd got along.
fearless.
Yahowah and I get along great because,
Yeah.
well, what I have chosen to do is where my attitudes and proclivities were out of sync with his. I've just decided that the smart thing to do is align mine with his. And fortunately, my attitudes and proclivities were and attributes were well aligned with Yahowah's for a long time. And so it was pretty easy just to say, all right, we'll do this together because, well, we agree on virtually everything. And where we don't agree, I agree with you. So that has been our approach. And so I would have been bold. I would have been belligerent. I would have been intolerant. Yeah, they would have gotten a tongue lashing.
Yeah.
I'd say, okay, all those of you who want to be religious, why don't you step over there and the earth is about to swallow you. What happened the last time you tried that religious shit around God? You made the damn golden calf. Aaron, you led the parade towards Egyptian religiosity. Let me tell you what's going to happen to the rest of you if you want to continue down that path. The earth is going to swallow you again. God hates religion. He hates it when you cop an attitude against him. He hates it when you erase his name.
And then lie about it.
Perhaps this is among the reasons Yahowah chose Moshe and not someone whose disposition was more unflappable. Had I been there, I would have addressed those trying to assert their will over God's the way I confront them on the Yahowah blog, the way I'm doing it right now, and recognizing their current affinity for onerous restrictions in Judaism over a relationship with God. It is evident that most Israelites would have made a beeline right back to Mitzrayim, preferring to be abused as slaves.
Yep.
And that's what you're doing to yourself with Judaism. It is an enslaving religion.
Horrible.
It's a religion of telling you all the things you can't do. Eating kosher, all the rules that they've imposed that you can't do. Those aren't Yahowah's rules.
They're arbitrarily made up. Most of them are just garbage.
All the
Garbage.
rules on what you can't do on the Shabbat. Shabbat becomes the most onerous day of the week.
Yes.
Rather than a day to celebrate the relationship with Yahowah, you got 1,000 things you can't do. You can't even turn on a goddamn light switch.
Well, no, there's 1,000 things you must do before there's 1,000 things you can't do. And furthermore, my lovely Jewish women out there. Yeah. Judaism is nothing more than modern female slavery. You're a chattel. You are nothing. Shave your head and go make a bunch of babies. And bravo, we're passing on our bloodline for what? For some dead relatives you had back in Poland? This is not what this is about.
Well, if you're a woman in Judaism, you're being used.
Yes.
A woman has no rights. What does a Jewish religious man say the first thing every morning?
I'm glad I wasn't born a woman.
I'm glad I'm not a woman.
Thank God.
Thank God I'm not a woman is the actual line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, women are in all religions, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, they're controlled. What did Paul say? Husbands, lord over your wives. Lord over them. Control them, own them.
Well, in Judaism, it actually happens. They do lord over their women.
Of course. Women have no rights in Judaism, just like they have no rights in Islam, just like they have very few rights in Christianity. One of the traits of religion is how they treat women. It's my litmus test for whether a person is in tune with God or not. Now, that's not to say if a woman is promoting that which is untrue or is a obstacle to the return of Israelites, she's going to get both barrels as if she were a man. At that point, her sexuality is irrelevant, and it's her mouth and her attitude that are relevant. But in this case, it was equally bad. The women, the men, they were all wrong. And so in this situation where I would have confronted them, the fact of the matter is that most Jews prefer to be influenced, to be controlled, whether it's by their politician or by their customs or by their religion.
Stockholm.
Yeah, it's called the Stockholm Syndrome.
They love being controlled by their rabbis, by their parents, by their husbands, by their bosses. They love it.
It's quite possible that God had already determined that the children of Israel couldn't be reasoned with, and he wanted nothing more to do with them than herd them to Israel with minimal additional confrontation and intervention. And that other than that, he simply gave up on them and said, I'll re-engage when I have to, but only when I have to. And now is the time that he has to, because there are 4 more Moed Mikre to be fulfilled. And if God didn't intervene, now they would not be fulfilled, and the whole human experience would be for naught.
Reminds me of a mashal I read once. I don't remember the address, but it goes a little something like, it's better to live on the roof of your home than with a contentious woman.
Yahweh's response can change as the situation necessitates. He can be true to his word and true to his character and have a different response to a different situation. This is why he revealed Zechariah 8 and Jeremiah 31, that he would deploy a different approach prior to his return. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but in both cases, there's going to be a different response from Yahweh to his people than previously. Different response for different situations. And he's going to deploy a slightly different approach and still be totally true to his Torah and to his word. So next time, his messenger isn't going to back down, and there will be no accommodation. The message and the messenger will be firm, uncompromising, and resolute. It's shub or no shub for you. Therefore, as we delve deeper into this narrative, it is becoming ever more obvious that it was intended to be prophetic and to speak to God's people at this time in this way. As we work to bring the final remnant of the children of Israel out of their stupor and back to the point that they're willing to listen to Yahweh at long last. To that end, you will notice that Yahweh did not include either Aaron or Miriam, Moshe's brother and sister, in his temporary accommodation to get Moshe back on his feet. The burden would be shared, but not the responsibility for communicating the word of God. Now that is particularly telling, considering that the pair of insiders would soon go rogue and claim Yahweh's authority for themselves, something God resolutely denounced. Therefore, even here, Moshe would remain Yahweh's lone voice. This was about sharing the burden, not forming a chorus. Further to this comparison, no one received a full application of the Ruach, Spirit of Yahweh. The singular Ruach that had been offered to Moshe was split and spread among 70 elderly men. This makes the situation associated with the Choter all the more unique and impressive, since Yada has the ongoing benefit of 7 Ruach rather than 1 spirit, evenly split among 70. Yahweh communicates his words through one person at a time, and he does it in the way of his choosing. And he does not choose a chorus. This notion that the Holy Spirit came upon every Christian is utter and complete nonsense. The Spirit is not chole. Chole is to be diseased and infirmed. And the Spirit has nothing to do with the religious. Vehemently opposed to the religious. And the Spirit is directed upon very, very few individuals, and none more than the Choter. And we have no indication that the Spirit has been shared with anyone else at this time other than the Choter. As we proceed through this narrative, there are some words that catch our eye. And I'm going to go through this now, and I think you're going to be amazed as to how many words draw our attention to something that has very little to do with that moment and everything to do with this opportunity. And there's going to be many of them as we proceed. The first will be a shaf, which addresses an ingathering. And this is because it is especially revealing at this time. And it is also associated with Asher Yada, because it suggests that Yahweh is attesting that Yada would know a great deal about the impending ingatherings, a cough, of Shabu and Towrah, and how they would be beneficial to the result he intended. Therefore, and thereafter, we find Choter, not Choter, but Choter, which, when properly transliterated and translated from its root, speaks of finding someone who liked to write. And write we would. You see 35 volumes behind me. Yes.
I'm counting.
I like to write, and write we would. Next, it is as if Yahweh was using this opportunity to not only help Moshe survive a rebellion predicated upon ongoing recalcitrance and belligerence of the Israelites, but also to prepare his Choter for both eventualities. We find a reference to the Ohel Moed, the tent of the restoring witness, to the eternal testimony, which Yada and Elia will reside within while they fulfill the Moed of the herald, Towrah. The witnesses will be Yatzab, standing and present at their posts atop the Temple Mount in front of the newly erected tent of the witness, such that upon Towrah, Yahweh will atzal. He's going to take away the ruach, even from Yada, albeit for a very short moment in time, and with his support, to advance the benefits of the relationship by the sacrifice that he will endure. By releasing the Spirit at that moment on a Shabbat morning to a full solar eclipse, Yada is going to release the seven spirits of Yahweh and the protection of the Malach. And Elia is going to invite the corporeal manifestation of Ha-Satan to take his Bashar, the herald's body. And this will be the sacrifice known as the Adamah Parah, the red heifer, whose ashes will be used once ignited by Yahweh, and the waters are released under the Temple Mount and narrated by Elia to purge the adulterous woman of Yisrael of her guilt, so that she can be betrothed to the returning Messiah and King, though just 10 days later. Yes, indeed. By doing so, the red heifer will atzal, remove the matzah, the religious bias and political prejudice of the people of Yisrael. There is also a reference to Sheba, and that's 70, which is the current age of the Zakan. Don't tell his wife, please. She doesn't think he's that old. Elderly individual that is now serving as Yahweh's final witness. He is indeed 70 as he makes these pronouncements to you. Evidently, it is an appropriate age to serve. But besides these dozen commonalities, I'm sure there's really nothing else to tie this narrative to our present situation, other than Yahweh has assembled a similar support team to advance our collaboration, sharing his restoring witness. But you can decide for yourself how much of this applies. So then, Yahweh, not Hashem, not Adonai, not G-D, certainly not Jesus, no goddamn Allah here.
Nope.
Yahweh. If you don't get that name through your thick skulls, Israel, and so it comes out of your mouth, acknowledging it, celebrating it, cherishing it, then you're going to be part of the carnage. It's not a threat. It's a statement of fact. Get this horrible propensity of yours to disown, to disavow, to erase Yahweh's name from his testimony and from your lives out of your system. Vomit it out now, or you're going to be part of the carnage. There's no ifs or ors or buts about it. Yahweh has made it very clear in the first three statements that it's Yahweh who rescues you. That Yahweh says, do not be religious. And then he says, anyone who is part of negating the importance and value of his name will not be forgiven. Statements 1, 2, 3 on the first tablet. So then Yahweh said to Moshe, the one who draws out, you should gather for either a harvest or for removal. Asaph. You should assemble and bring together to reward or so that they perish. Call imperative. Literal, but it's a choice. Concerning me. Listen to that. Yahweh said, concerning me. He didn't say concerning you, Moshe. He didn't say concerning them, did he? The children of Israel. He didn't say concerning the rabbis. He didn't say concerning Judaism. This is a referendum on Yahweh. Do you know what Samuel said when the children of Israel said, we want to be just like every other Gentile nation, man. We want a king. We want a king to lead us. We don't want these Shaphat judges to interpret the Torah for us. We don't want any Yahweh to interfere with our situation. No, we want to be just like the other Gentile nations. We want a king. We want Saul. He's tall. He's handsome. He's articulate. We want that guy. And Samuel came to Yahweh and says, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I failed you. They've chosen Shaul, the king, just like the Gentiles today have chosen Shaul, Paul, the author and inspiration of the Christian New Testament, the man who invented the notion of Jesus Christ. They've chosen him over me. And what did Yahweh say to Samuel, you know? He said, Samuel, they have not rejected you. They've rejected me. That is what God is saying to Moshe right now. You're going to gather them together for either a harvest or for removal concerning me. This is a referendum on me, Yahweh. So then Yahweh said to Moshe, you should gather for either a harvest or removal concerning me 70 individuals of the old men. So we have Yahweh and Asaph, which I told you about, this word for harvest or removal. And then we have Sheba, 70. And it's Zaken, of the old men, of Yisrael, of those who struggle and contend with God, whom for the sake of this relationship, you know and can acknowledge. Yasha. This is Asher, Yada. Asher is the first word I translated 24 years ago. It is what began all of these books and all of the translations that have followed of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Asher. I knew it was misrepresented, and I had some 20 different English Bible translations at the time, and I looked up what has become my favorite prophecy of all prophecies, 2 Samuel 7. And in looking it up and trying to render Asher correctly in it, it led to this love affair with what do God's words actually mean? What did he actually say? Asher. And when I started writing about this, I took on a pen name because I wanted to be anonymous. I didn't want to write about this under my name because the story wasn't about me. It's what I was learning about Yahowah. And so I used Yada as the name. It was not only Yada Yahowah, the name of the books, to know Yahowah, but my name was Yada. If you listen to any one of the thousands and thousands of radio programs that I did and blogs over this enormous, score of years, was always Yada. And so here you have Asher, the first word I translated.
And the dog sleeping
beautiful Labrador that's at my feet. She's named Asher.
Yeah.
It is the word that I cherish. It's my first Hebrew word. You know, some babies grow up and their first word is Abba, the daddy.
Mine was pizza.
Yeah, last was pizza. She's a little weird, though. She's an acquired taste, yeah. Just keep that in mind.
Yep.
Mine was Asher. It means to be in a relationship. It speaks of forming a relationship with things. It's a word that tells us about walking along the straight and narrow path to get the most enjoyment out of life. It speaks of the benefits that are attributable to the relationship that God intended. Asher, a marvelous word. And then Yada, the name that I chose, the name that Yahweh chose for me 3,450 years before I chose it. So that I could lead these final Asaph ingatherings on behalf of Yahweh, a name that I uniquely would have the distinction of reintroducing to God's people. And beginning these blogs on your behalf as part of the Yahowah blog when I turned Sheba 70 as Zakan, a more elderly man. All of this points to what we're doing today.
Question. Zakan, is that the root word to zikaron?
What about Zikaron?
is zakan, the root word to zikaron.
Well, I don't know how it pertains to this, but zakar means memorable man. It is as a verb to remember, and as a noun, it speaks of a masculine individual. It means memorable man. Zikaron would be all things pertaining to the most memorable of men. Yeah. One of the songs that Leah wrote called Zakaron, and I told her that it was what she was really writing about was Zeroah. There are three Zeroah. Moshe, the individual being talked about here, Dode, who is the most important of the Zeroah, and myself as the final Zeroah cultivating these Akaf harvests. And she wrote Zakaron instead, and I said it's kind of funny, and because it, in a backhanded way, the Zeroah is a Zakaron, but there is no reference to a Zakaron in any of the things that you are referencing. So every time that now she has an opportunity, she brings up Zakaron as if she was right all along, as opposed to kind of got lucky there. So anyway, let's continue this statement. Wow, so that Leah doesn't steal attention away from the point God was making here. So then Yahweh said to Moshe, you should gather for either a harvest or removal concerning me 70 individuals of the old men of Yisrael, those who either struggle and contend with God, or those who engage and endure with the Almighty, whom for the sake of the relationship you can acknowledge, Asher Yada, whom you know, to show the benefits of the way, and are aware that are indeed among the most mature of the people. Kahem Zaken Ha'am. At this point, we can't be playing with the kids. There's no time to grow up. And the literate, who can write. Wow. Choter. Of those who can write, of them, grab hold of them and take them, select them at this time, bring them to the tent of the restoring witness, to the eternal testimony, the El Oel Moed. The first prophecy regarding what I have been asked to do on behalf of our king, Dode, and his father, Yahweh, is presented in the fourth day of creation. When Yahweh speaks of, and he goes to great length in the fourth day, to speak of the greater and lesser luminaries, there's a whole story about them, and how the greater and lesser luminaries would serve to be a witness to the Moed, the restoring witness to the eternal testimony. What the symbolism explains is that Dode is the greater luminary. He is the most important person who ever lived. He is the one that Yahweh says is returning to me, with me, as brilliant as the sun. He is our king. He is the Messiah. He is the ultimate Zeroah, the sacrificial lamb who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. And he is brilliant. But so few of God's people know it, that someone would have to come along to celebrate the Moedim that would reflect his brilliance, to make the sun's light known to God's people. And he is the lesser luminary, also known as the moon, that reflects the sun's light. And they are bound together through the Moed. And this is because Dode, whose first life, by the way, ended when he was how many years old? 70.
70.
The age I am now. Mm-hmm. That the lesser luminary would reflect the greater luminary's light regarding the Moed. And the Moed are important in this regard because David, in his second of 3 lives, fulfilled the first 3 of them in 33 CE, Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. 1 year from now, in 2026, I will conduct the next fulfillment of a Moed. It will be an Akaf, an ingathering of God's people in Shabuah. And then I'm responsible for conducting the Towrah ingathering in year 6000 Yah on September 23rd of 2033. And so while I am responsible for the next 2 Moed, as Dode fulfilled the first 3, it goes beyond that. Dode is the only one whose Bashar body was sacrificed to fulfill a Moed. His Bashar body became the Passover lamb, as Zeroah affirms. My Bashar body, as the Bashar witness, will be sacrificed to fulfill Teruah as the red heifer, to prepare the adulterous woman of Yisrael for her betrothal to Dode. And I do it in service to our king. But there's only 2 men whose bodies are sacrificed for this purpose. And don't get all uppity and say, well, that's human sacrifice. That can't be godly. Get over yourselves. God, you're stupid. Dode's nefesh soul occupied a Bashar corporal body for this purpose in his second of 3 lives. It was there to be disposed of. It was useless other than to fulfill the Moed. My corporeal body, it's hanging in there pretty well for a 70-year-old, but I'm going to tell you, by the time we reach the fulfillment of Teruah, by the way, which is to the backdrop of a solar eclipse, which means at this moment the moon is actually in front of the sun, and I fulfill this sacrifice, I'm going to be delighted to give up my corporeal body, because my nefesh soul will soar at that point and be emboldened and enriched and empowered and enabled in ways that you can't even imagine.
By then, we will need a vacation.
So, yeah, but it's part of the symbolism. And the symbolism here is important to Yahweh.
Yeah.
That's why it's the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah, this bloody red man of the earth, who is productive. He is the man from Edom, who Yeshaya affirms in the 63rd chapter will save many. It's all one continual story. Doing so on a Moed because of OLL, because the OL of Yahweh, this tent of Yahweh, the tent of the restoring witness, will be fluttering in the breeze above him. And because, who was it that brought the tent of the witness to the Temple Mount and the Ark of the Covenant along with it?
Obed-Edom.
It was Dode that coordinated it, dancing as and dressed as the high priest, but it was Obed-Edom that was responsible for the task. Obed means one who works. Edom associated this prophetically with the man from Edom who will ultimately save many. One is a dress rehearsal for the final fulfillment. God is a masterful storyteller. Then, without any pressure, solely on their own volition, let them stand presenting themselves there with you. Midbar 11:16. And I will descend, diminishing an aspect of myself, and talk with you there. Then I will take away and remove Atzal. I will hold back and deny, reducing for a time a portion of the Ruach of the Spirit, which for the benefit of the relationship, Asher, is upon you, and place it for a limited time, Shem, and set it on them. Then they will bear wa nasa. They will carry along with you the ba masa, the burden and the bias, the oppressive desires and prejudices of the people, ha'am, so that you will not continue to tolerate and carry it, wa lo nasha. You won't bear it by yourself alone, ata la bad. Bad Midbar, in the wilderness, Numbers 11:17. The children of Israel were burdensome. That's certain. They were annoying. They were unappreciative. They were prejudiced against God and biased towards religion. It was more than God could bear, much less a man, even 70 men. This remains one of the most unheralded revelations in the Torah. The children of Israel had become obnoxious towards God, and they've been that way since the beginning. They remain so. You remain so. In fact, so many Jews are as arrogant and belligerent in their animosity towards Yahweh that they even attack those whom Yahweh has chosen to speak for him, to them. Now, this known, Yahweh would continue to support and communicate through this single man. The others were there to run interference between Moshe and the most malcontent of Israelites. Sort of as our team does today. But there is no evidence that they were of any value, unlike today, where they must succeed for us to succeed, for Israel to survive. Moshe wasn't accommodated to any significant extent. He was not benefited either. He was just set back on his feet and given an out, a reason to carry on. If we were to render bashar, as it follows in this, as meat, and as it was used previously in a reference that I had made to bashar as meat, unaware of its verbal root, the Syrian lesson here would be that if God gives you what you want, if he has given up on you, then, well, you can get what you ask for. But I don't think that is correct. And I took a departure, one that I was very clear to point out, that I have rendered throughout this discussion, that most people think is about bashar, meat. And bashar's primary connotation is derived from its verbal root. It means to herald a message. It means to be a corporeal messenger. It is one of the most common titles that Yahweh uses to describe the job that I am doing on behalf of his beloved son, our king, Dod, to serve as a herald. It speaks of the body that Dod surrendered and that I will surrender for the benefit of the children of Israel. As a noun, bashar can mean animal, which all humans are. It can speak of a domesticated or wild animal. It can speak of any life form, really. It is often rendered flesh because, in Christianity, there was this battle between the spirit and the flesh that Paul made up because he wanted to appeal to the Gnostics in Greece. It is very seldom rendered meat. But that is how most translations render it here, because they just don't understand what was being said or have any appreciation for those dozen words that I shared with you before that all have so much prophetic import. So in this case, in this discussion, that Israel's animosity towards God was not so much about the dietary considerations, but instead by presenting Bashar as its actionable verbal root indicates, as the human herald, then we know how this prophecy is to be fulfilled. The one that will ultimately resolve the people's misplaced appetite for antagonism. We're rewarded with life-saving and nurturing advice. But to benefit, today's Israelis must disavow Judaism and be set apart unto Yahowah, becoming special again. I will share this next line with you, and then we will conclude this program. We've gone way beyond our normal hour limit. God, Yahowah, told Moshe, and this is interesting, because Yahowah wasn't speaking. He didn't say, I will tell the children of Israel this. He didn't say, I'm going to tell the 70 this. He said, I want you to say this to the people. And this is because Yahowah and Yehudim, they were not on speaking terms. The Israelites had told God previously to shut up and go away, that they never wanted to see him or hear from him again. And so just as you are listening to me convey this message to you, speaking for Yahowah, Moshe would do the same. And to the people, say, be special and act set apart. Be devoted and dedicated, uniquely special. And since they were at that moment religious and political and cantankerous complainers, to be Kadash, they would have to be non-religious, apolitical, and appreciative of God. They would have to be the opposite of what they were. There were 600,000 Israelites. One person who had yet to take his stand, Caleb. One person who didn't understand what was going on, Yoshua ben Nun. And all the rest were cantankerous, antagonistic towards Yahowah. And so the first instruction is to be different, to be special, to be set apart from all of that. This is Israel today. It is religious, it is political, it is cultural. What Israel is the antithesis of Kadash. It is not set apart unto Yahowah, but cantankerous and obnoxious and belligerent and religious and political. These are the things that are common amongst Israelites. And God says, if you are going to benefit from anything I have to say or do for you, you need to be Kadash, set apart unto me, and different. So he said, tell them to be set apart and act special. Be unique in the future from this day forward. And then you will be nourished by the Bashar, the human herald at that time, Akal Bashar, so that you can be fed by the corporeal messenger of the good news. Now, by contrast, you have wept and wailed, moaning and crying in the ear of Yahowah to ask, who is this nurturing Bashar, this human herald for us? Where and when will this corporeal messenger of good news be feeding us? Because it was better for us in Mitzrayim, in the confining and troublesome subjugation. So therefore, Yahweh will, at the appropriate time, he will provide for you and on your behalf the Bashar, the human herald. And then at that time, you can be nourished. Bamidbar, in the wilderness, Numbers 11:18. Promise made, promise kept.
Yeah, who and why is this Bashar? Sounds like my first letter to you.
Yeah. Here we are.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. We look forward to continuing this amazing story that was prophetic of our conversation on this day. Thank you for listening. I am Yada, the Bashar Herald of Yahowah. Good day.